We're here today with Bob Radie, Chairman and CEO of Neuraptive Therapeutics. Bob, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
So you recently, right in the middle of COVID, accepted the position to come on and lead Neuraptive. So how did that come to be? Why Bob Radie for Neuraptive?
Oh, Joe, it's a great question. I wasn't sure. I was sitting on a couple of boards and was thinking, did I want to go back and sort of be a CEO again? I had been the CEO of 3 companies previously, and got interested because Evan Zanis, who is our Executive Vice President of R&D, is someone who I knew from my time on the Paratech board, somebody who I have a lot of respect for. He was our Chief Development Officer there, and he actually had come here to Neuraptive about 1.5 years ago and started to talk to me a little bit about the company and the things that they were working on. And I got intrigued. I've always been intrigued when I find areas of significant unmet medical need. And this is certainly the whole area of peripheral nerve repair is, I think, an area that's essentially been ignored by our industry for a long, long period of time. And so, I started talking to Evan. I was intrigued. I found out as well that Neuraptive was backed primarily by a venture firm called Neurine Healthcare Investors. And Neurine had decided, a relatively new venture firm, had decided to call Philadelphia its home. And, for those of us in this area, we know we need, that is a part of our ecosystem that I think we need more of. We need more venture investors. We need more venture capital to really, take the great ideas that are developed in this area and bring them along in the process. So I was especially then interested even more to get to know the Neurine team, and they had put a lot of money into the company through a Series A financing. So, the combination of all of that, the unmet medical need, knowing Evan and knowing, and respecting the work that he does and that his involvement in the company was very important. And then, the fact that it was backed by a venture firm that was, in our backyard, all were, reasons to entice me to take the position of chairman and CEO back in June of 2020.
Bob, you've been a CEO at several life sciences companies. So how did the life sciences come to the fore? And you don't just become a CEO just because, as I think you said, they don't send you to CEO school. So how did you get trained up for this?
Yeah, I really go back and I think about why science, and I still think of some of my favorite teachers all the way back to 7th and 8th grade, high school and college, were those that taught me different aspects of science. And I just really liked science generally. And then in college, I got a little bit of exposure to, I was a chemistry major, and I got a little exposure to organic chemistry. And the idea of kind of learning science as it relates to things that are organic and alive and growing and the human body just fascinated me. So decided that I wanted to go in and get a degree in chemistry, and then came out of school, wasn't really sure, only had a bachelor's degree, wasn't sure I wanted to keep going in school. And my brother-in-law was a pharmaceutical sales rep for Eli Lilly. And he was a pharmacist by training. And he said to me, this is the best job because you get to go around and talk to physicians and take the science that you've been trained to date, and the company's going to train you on the products, and you get to talk to these guys and ladies and explain your product and try to influence them. And it just really struck a chord with me that I could take science, but then be in a position where I'm actually talking to, really educated folks in our society. So long story short, I spent 18.5 years at Eli Lilly, and then wanted to get more entrepreneurial and started to look around for smaller companies. So I moved from Indiana to the Pennsylvania area and started working for a company that was local here called Vicuron for a gentleman named George Horner. who's a real mentor to me in my time, and just really enjoyed the smaller, more entrepreneurial biotech, spec pharma space, a lot more responsibility, a lot more accountability, and I've just parlayed that experience into different roles. I've been chief business officer, chief operating officer, and then eventually CEO. And because people like George and Nick Nicolaides, who's currently a local CEO for Navrogen and was the CEO of Morphotek, were folks that were willing to take a chance on me, put me into positions that I had never done before. And I'm really appreciative of having people like that who were willing to take that chance. And so, here I am. I have to pinch myself every once in a while to feel super blessed to have had a chance to, work on so many fun projects, work on so many technologies, products that, some that have actually gotten approved and into humans. And so it's all been very, very rewarding and challenging, not without its significant bumps along the road. Anybody who's been in the business as long as I have, we tend to talk about our successes, but I have a long list of things that have gone less well too. So.
Bob, one of the things that you shared with me earlier was a distinction that you've noted, and it's had to have come out of your experience, and that is the distinction between value creation and value realization, and the fact that it's great to create value with an idea or discovery or the process of a company, but how do you fully realize that? So, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons why you were a really attractive candidate for this position, because ultimately, when you see that you've got something that's got great potential, you look at creating that value, but then coming to realize it. So I wonder if you could talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, I'd be happy to. I think that there are people who are really, really good at doing things that create value. In our industry, scientists and physicians and developers, drug developers, regulatory folks. I mean, they do things that are so important as we move, drugs and devices through various processes, and you create value. But it's always been my contention that it's a different skill set to understand how to realize that value, right? And value realization in our industry comes from either an up round financing, or taking a company public, or an M&A, right, where you're paying investors. The investors in the earlier stages of the company get to realize the value that they've put into it. And I just think it's a different skill set. It's probably an area that I'm stronger than I am on the value creation side. And I've gotten really good over the years at surrounding myself with people who can create value. And where I think I add a fair amount is I've figured out ways to to use my value realization skills, and how do you put a company forward to present it in the right way? How do you compel strategic partners to see value and to want to put money on the table for the value that's been created? And I do think they're different skill sets. And I often tell a funny story, and if my wife sees this, she's going to not be so happy with me. But she's a horseback rider and does professional riding as well. And she has a horse, and she's been working with this horse for a while. And one day she said to me, my trainer told me that based on all the success that I've had in winning different events, that we could probably sell him, his name is Slick, for a lot more than we bought him for. And I said, that's great. I said, but are you ever going to let me sell him? And she said, of course not. And so that's my point, right? She created a lot more value, but not value that we're ever going to realize, other than her happiness, which is obviously quite valuable. So that, I do think that there are different skills and understanding that creating value and realizing value can be different things. So
it may be early at this stage of the game, but have you and New Rhine started to identify the path of value realization for Neuraptive?
We think so. We're getting a lot of interest in what we're doing. We have a technology that has the potential to really just change the way peripheral nerve injuries are treated going forward. And we're in the clinic, in clinical studies right now, really proving out that thesis. And if we're successful, as I anticipate we will be, this will, just as I said, really be a different game-changing way that peripheral nerve injuries are treated. And today, without getting into too much detail, if you suffer a traumatic peripheral nerve injury, so think about however the reasoning, you cut your hand, you cut your arm, leg, even nerves in your face. Our bodies have a really interesting reaction, which is when a nerve gets severed, all of the parts of the nerve that are distal to the injury, so where the injury occurs, the nerve will stay alive from sort of the central nervous system to that injury, but where it's severed down away from the central nervous system will degenerate. Within 72 hours, the body has essentially destroyed those nerves and the axons in those nerves, recognizing them as foreign. Almost it's sort of an immune response. And the way we recover from that is the nerves have to regenerate. Our nerves will regrow. Our peripheral nerves do regrow, but they regrow very slowly. And there's also risk that they won't reattach to the muscle plate or the sensory area the right way. And so people often have very slow and less than full recovery to be able to function, whether it's motion or sensation. And what we're working on is a way to potentially fuse the injured nerves back together and preserve the nerves distal to the injury so that they don't ever degenerate, and speed up recovery, turning what can be months and years of recovery into days and weeks, which obviously has huge impact on quality of life, productivity, and all the things that everybody can imagine. So that game-changing nature of what we're doing has attracted attention from a number of strategic companies. We're obviously also, looking at opportunities to potentially raise more capital and or partner the technology that we're working on. So really, moving in on a variety of different directions at this moment.
One of the things that we mentioned earlier, and might be a good thing to talk about here, is also the interest that the Department of Defense has shown in the work that you're doing.
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So, what the Department of Defense always looking for ways to protect and improve the outcomes for our warfighters. And as one would imagine, peripheral nerve injuries are fairly common for warfighters and those that are in battle. And bullet wounds, knife wounds, shrapnel from explosives and things like that, all can cause a traumatic peripheral nerve injury. And so the Department of Defense has been talking to Neuraptive. A grant was recently given to a consortium of academic centers anchored by Johns Hopkins that are going to study our lead program, which we call NTX-001, in gap nerve injuries. So these are nerve injuries where there's a segment of the nerve that gets ablated due to the trauma. And the treatment is to typically autograft or take a piece of nerve from another part of the body to fill that gap. And this consortium of academic centers is going to use our technology to fuse both ends of the autograft nerve to the existing nerve, both in primates and in humans. And so it's my view that the government will potentially be a continued source of funding for the work that we're doing because of the potential implications to our veterans and our warfighters. Obviously, we all want to do everything we can to make sure those folks get the best treatment out there. And I think the government will be a likely customer of Neuraptive's technology as well for our warfighters and those in battle.
Yeah, that's terrific. You talked a little bit about clinical trials and the interesting impact that COVID has had on the pace at which your trials have moved forward. I'd like to talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, look, certainly we all know that COVID has created a mountain of challenges in so many areas. Certainly those of us that are trying to run clinical studies have faced those challenges as well. Just getting a site to get up and registered and trained to be a clinical site, right? Where most of these sites, the actual caregivers are still going into work and doing their job, but a lot of the administrative staff who are doing more of this type of work are remote. The hospitals are, just not functioning at the same level of efficiency for that type of work, if they're even interested in doing that type of work, in light of everything else that they're focused on. So we've had trouble just getting sites up and running. And then when they are up and running, we're just seeing a decrease in the presence or a number of folks coming in with the types of trauma, which is a good thing. Don't want to downplay that. But it affects the rate of enrollment in a study where you're trying to measure or enroll people for things that happen quite randomly, right? And so you've got to have enough sites to capture random acts. And then, we have people just tend to be driving less over the last year, less sporting activities and things like that, where a lot of times these types of injuries occur. So we've definitely seen the impact that COVID's had on both of those areas. But we're persevering forward. We have a number of sites up and running. We do have more than a handful of subjects enrolled, and we'll continue to move those studies forward.
And what is the timeline for completion of the studies as it's
so we're expecting to have a readout of our primary data endpoint of the phase 2 study that we're running right now by the middle of 2022. And we're still on pace to achieve that, even with the challenges that I just described.
Bob, you've been an avid supporter of the Philadelphia Life Sciences Cluster, and I wanted to take a minute. I think your excitement about working with Neuraptive because of their presence here, and the cluster in general. So I wanted to, I know Neuraptive has grown here. I don't think the original research necessarily came from Philadelphia.
That's correct. Right.
So why Philly? Why is this cluster working so well for you?
It's been home to me now since I moved from Indianapolis in 1992 timeframe. And I just think that this area is, we've got some of the best academic centers in the country right here in Philadelphia, and some of the best hospitals, in the world right here in Philadelphia. And then in the periphery, right all around this area, we have some of the largest global pharmaceutical companies that are not far away. I don't need to list them because everybody, on this thing call probably knows who I'm talking about. So it's a perfect sort of, petri dish, I think, of for us to continue to really grow. And I know I get frustrated when I see companies thinking about picking up and moving up to Boston, and nothing wrong with that. But why not? Why not stay right here? Why not continue to build the ecosystem that we're building in biotech and spec pharma and healthcare? Take advantage of all of that great stuff that I just described. Entrepreneurs, talent, is all right here. So I'm a bit passionate about it. I've been on the board of directors for what was PA Bio, is now Life Science PA, coming up on 6 years. So I'm very, very committed to the work that Chris Molyneux and his team over there at Life Science PA are doing. And so I'd like to see this area get more venture funding. I was really excited about Neuraptive's decision to call Philadelphia home, as I mentioned earlier, and it was influential for me to know that they were interested in this area and continuing to invest in companies in this area as well. So I think we've got all the ingredients to continue to grow and become, if we're not already there, one of the top sites in the country, one of the top areas in the country for advancement of, pharmaceuticals and devices in healthcare.
Well, we certainly agree with you, and we appreciate your commitment to the region. We're very excited about the work that you're doing. It really is important and is a game changer. So we wish you continued success with the trials. We're going to keep an eye on your next raise with Neuraptive together, and we're going to watch this value harvesting, because I have no doubt that's coming in your future. Thanks so much for being with us. We look forward. We'll be back. We're going to keep track, and we'll talk again soon.
It's been a real pleasure. Much appreciated.
You bet.
Take care.